Georgia lawyers Bob and Irreverent D talk law. Listen up for stories about how things really happen in our legal system. Who are these guys? Dwayne Singleton, Irreverent D, is a criminal defense attorney in the state of Georgia. Benjamin O. Benson, aka Bob, is a personal injury attorney in Atlanta. Now, sit back and take a listen as Bob and Irreverent D talk law.
So today we're having a guest, Doug Okorocha, here. We're going to be talking about the news and talking about some property issues. Doug is an expert on property issues and litigation, which we hate. Litigation is a horribly inefficient way of making a living, but we do it.
It's so much fun, right?
I know.
You get to get all your frustrations out, yell.
You get to have your Matlock moment.
Everyone welcome Doug Okorocha, expert in real estate law stuff.
Doug, I have a question, because you're like...
Let me just appreciate you all bringing me on.
Okay.
I definitely, this is a nice setup, and I definitely appreciate y'all having me on.
No problem. I just had a question that drives me crazy all the time. So when I'm signing a closing document, and it says in there I'm going to give up my right to trial.
Right.
Can I scratch through that and put jury trial on there?
Well,
or is
first
that going to
of all,
give me a problem with getting my loan?
That's a common question.
Okay.
One, I get that a lot. Two, you cannot scratch through anything.
Okay.
And your only choice is you sign, get the loan, or you don't sign and you walk away and you pay in cash.
Okay. So at the closing, are you representing me, or are you representing the bank, or who are you
I'm
representing?
typically there on behalf of the bank.
Okay.
So if it's finance, I'm the settlement agent for the bank. So I have to look out for their interests.
So what if I have some problems later on and I do need a trial? Am I just out, or do I call you?
As long as it's not issues with the loan or the bank, you can call me and we can kind of work it out.
Okay.
We can figure it out best way we can.
Like a kind of problem like the seller knew that there was like a dead body in the cellar.
I get those calls a lot.
And then when you took possession of the house, like you find the dead body and you think, man, I really need to sue them
or
for that.
I don't want to live here anymore.
You get the what's the Ghostbuster green blue guy coming out.
There's a poltergeist there.
Exactly.
Isn't there a case on that where there's like a ghost
case
in
on
a house
everything.
or something?
Yeah. All of that stuff gets real funny. But fortunately, I haven't had one of those cases come by.
Well, that's good.
Well, I think we have an interesting real estate thing coming up, or I guess it could be the.
Yeah, well, this certainly has to do with property. So we're going to cover the news.
And now, the news.
Today, we're going to cover something that has been kind of exploding in Atlanta and becoming
when they call
more
it
and
the
more
National
important.
Guard. That's
When they-
exploding.
That's right. The governor recently said he's calling out the National Guard. By the time this episode drops, I'm not sure what will exactly have happened.
Hopefully nothing.
Right. But all of this kind of came to a head a week or two ago when the police did a clearing operation in a forest in southeast Atlanta. Frankly, until I read onto this, I didn't know we had a forest in Atlanta.
Who are they clearing?
The basic facts are that the police were clearing out this forest of people who were staying in the forest that they say were not supposed to be there. They were living in tents, living in tree houses, just kind of living generally in this forest for reasons we'll discuss later.
So like Robin Hood, Sherwood Forest.
It was Sherwood Forest, exactly.
Okay. All right.
These people are all the Robin Hood and the merry men,
Right, okay.
merry people. So while they were doing this clearing operation, the one of the people who was there allegedly shot at a state trooper, and then there was a firefight, and they returned fire, and that person who allegedly shot at the state trooper was killed. Those are the facts as we know them. Then several days later, there were protests in downtown Atlanta. There were police cruisers, or at least one police cruiser, on fire. And there were arrests and things like that. So it really kind of turned into this conflagration of stuff that arose out of the shooting of this person who was in the forest.
So I guess my question for the real estate guy is, can I just go live in the forest?
You can. Yeah, the thing is you can.
It's public land, right? I'm public.
It's public land, and you can, but it's going to be on the owner of the land to make sure that they're taking the proper steps to try to remove you from living there, right?
Okay.
So in this instance...
so as an owner, I got to check out my land, make sure nobody's
if you're not there, you gotta take care of your property still. So if you're not living on the premises, you still got to make sure there, because there are people who take advantage of absent owners, and they're known as squatters. And in this situation, we can probably label the people that were living in the forest as squatters at that point. The foundation had bought the land for Cop City, right. And at that point they were the owners, and they were the people protesting, the people living on the land were protesting and occupying the premises without the permission of the owners. So at that point you could consider them squatters, and it would be on the owners to make sure they take the proper steps to remove them.
All right, so let's put some facts in that background to give it more context. So what happened is in 2017, the Atlanta City Police Foundation and another private organization that wanted to build a studio had basically petitioned and gotten permission to change the nature of part of this forest area and create a training facility for police and some other private thing that's
well, that's a big thing right now, right? We want to train police officers, make sure they're well trained.
That's right. That's what the police are saying.
Right.
That's right.
We don't want to have people getting shot and killed and all this kind of stuff because they don't have proper training, right?
Correct.
So that's a good thing.
So then at some point after that, people started living in the forest to, quote, save the forest.
Correct.
Okay.
And they're very, very vocal about it, and they
so they moved there with the intent to protect the trees and the bunnies and the deer.
That's right.
Okay. All right, I got you.
In the same way that you've heard stories in the past about somebody like chaining themselves to a big huge
protect
tree.
the spotted owl.
Protect
right.
the spotted. That's right. Nothing wrong with that.
Right. Peaceful protest.
Peaceful protest. At some point, though, that there were some violent actions back and forth. And
can't do that.
You can't get away with it for very long anyway.
And expect to live there.
So at some point, and that escalated to in December. This past December, there were more altercations where the police were trying to help these private concerns clear the area and start their construction, and the people that were in Sherwood Forest, actually the name of the place, is South River Forest, also known as the Walani Forest.
Okay.
And they started having conflicts with the police officers and started throwing stones, and the police officers were kind of trying to find some way, non-violently, I guess, to have them be removed. Eventually, several of the people that were there in that forest were labeled as or described as domestic terrorists, and then that kind of led to this thing where they're doing the clearing operation.
So how do we move from peaceful protesters to domestic terrorists?
But if you're asking the police, it's when they start torching things.
That too. Also,
they're living there, right? So get the squatters' rights or some kind of protection.
Yes, yes. In all instances, you do have rights as a squatter. However, again, going back, the owner taking it down in situations that I've represented people on, you'll go through the eviction process, and again, you're not required. You're actually you're not supposed to, as an owner, take your own steps to remove a squatter from your premises.
So I just can't come up on a Saturday morning and start throwing crap on the street.
No, because the public policy is those type of altercations almost always end in violence, right?
Okay.
So you want to get courts involved. The court will give you permission, a writ of possession, to take over the premises again, and then at that point you'll call the sheriff's office, and the sheriff will have somebody. There will be a officer that will come with you on the property to make sure that
So you got to get your order, get it to the officer, and then they remove the people.
Exactly. So, to avoid situations of violence. Now,
is there a difference in between having a house though and living in the woods?
I mean, we can extrapolate the logic to the forest, but in the instance, it all works out the same, correct? Owner taking the steps to getting the permission from the courts, then the sheriff's coming out. Now, it escalates to the point when I was going to say earlier, there was reports that, one, burning of property or burning of, I guess,
destruction
trees
of property, right?
out there, but also there was they were met with guns as well. There was guns,
But
there
are
was
we
shots fired.
burning property, or are we just setting little campfires and using the wood laying around?
Either
'Cause
or, you don't want fire
police
involved.
reports,
You don't want
we
fire.
exaggerate a little bit.
Can we talk about that for a second? One of the things I found when I was preparing for this is the complete terrible lack of actual facts in the news reporting about like what happens. When I was reading through these articles, I'm trying to find, well, you would want to know, well, did some judge issue an order that says, okay, it's okay, or you have permission, you have the right to evict these people from this place? There's nothing in the ether, nothing that I can find.
So no order.
Well,
we don't know.
Presumably,
Okay.
you would have to have an order to do that, right?
Correct. I would suppose
You would think so.
Yeah, especially if you're going to have police involved to go do the clearing. But I think at that point, it probably takes it outside of your regular legal protocols.
Because they're
and
saying
they probably
crimes are being committed in there.
Exactly. So at that point, you could probably have law enforcement go on there without the need.
Right, because they have probable cause to believe that there's some kind of crime happening.
Exactly. So it takes it out of the
articulable suspicion.
It takes it out of the owner trying to remove people to law enforcement trying to protect.
Right.
Yeah.
The second part that I found super frustrating, first is you can't find any of the actual facts. The second is that you don't have any, that I can see, transparency from the police force that says, hey, here's what we were doing.
Well, you're not going to get that.
They won't.
I mean, the National Guard's getting called out. Shouldn't somebody be
Somebody
reporting
should
on
say,
this?
well, this is what we were doing there. And here's why. And here's what our authority was for doing that. No, they just said, we're doing a raid. We're doing a clearing operation. I mean, maybe people ought to be thinking, well, what gives you the authority to do that?
Did they find anything illegal in the raid?
That's the third thing that I'm super, not very happy about.
Trespassing is illegal.
Trespassing is illegal, but here's the thing, Doug. I'm reading through the... I'm not calling... I'm not... I know, right? I'm reading through a press release from some government agency, and it says that they found, in the clearing operation, they found... mortar-like devices, multi-edged weapons, and blow torches.
So we have a torch for lighting your doobie.
That's right.
We have a pocket knife.
Right.
And we've got a
bottle rocket.
Firecrackers.
You've got a flare.
Maybe the mortar ones you drop in.
You've got a flare or a bottle rocket.
Yes.
A hunting knife and
because had it been some kind of illegally made or manufactured bomb, it would say that.
If there was an arsenal there, they would say we found
72
15
guns.
AR-15s, assault rifles. No, but they didn't. That's all they found.
We
was
found
a
some
trenching
fireworks,
knife, a trenching knife,
and a lighter.
Right. Well.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's run in there and kill some folks over it.
So have you ever had to represent somebody in that kind of circumstance where they're getting evicted?
Where blow torches are involved? No, not yet.
I mean, it was probably just a butane.
Right?
They're great for lighting a cigar. It doesn't get the flavor in.
You're right.
That's right. Could you call that a blowtorch? The little cigar
blowtorch.
Of course it is.
It's
a blowtorch. Yeah.
Well, no, not necessarily there, but again, taking it down a level to my practice, I did actually have recently had a closing where the buyer was a real estate investor. Looking to basically fix and flip the property, your normal type of real estate investment deal.
Good to hear people are still doing that.
Yeah. Actually, that's probably the only thing's going on right now. But bought the property. They financed the property. So financed, they got a loan. It was only a 6-month, renovation loan. But anyway, bought the house, squatter there. So there's surprise. So now.
Your friend,
well, my buyer, not friend, but
okay, your customer, your client.
Yeah, right.
They bought the property.
From a seller.
And then when they went to go take possession of the property, there's somebody living there.
Like couches, TVs on the wall.
All right,
remote
and it's
control,
not just
everything.
leftover stuff from when.
No, they actually living there. So
did they find out who's living there?
It was the previous. The idea was the previous seller. The previous seller never left the premises. But okay, so here's the messed up part about it is that now you got to go through.
Well, wait, this can happen. Wait, hang on.
It's tough. It gets tough. I mean, it definitely.
So the previous seller sold it to a corporation or something.
Yeah, sold it to a company,
investment
company. And just never moved out. But So now you got to go through the process of removing the squatter. So now she goes, and I represented on her. We go through the eviction process, file.
She has to get the person evicted.
She has to get the person evicted. She cannot go on there herself, change locks. She can't go over there.
Who pays the mortgage while you're waiting?
That's the problem. And here's where it gets super messed up, is that typically your eviction process in Georgia doesn't take more than 21 days, 30 at the most, right?
It's quick, right?
Yeah. You file, they'll serve within a week, and then within a week you'll usually have a court date. So we're usually in court in 3 weeks. That's usually what I've advised my clients. COVID, however, has created a backlog in these courts. And again, well, let me step back. Evictions are done in magistrate court. So we're at the lowest level of court and the lowest level of importance.
We're still working through COVID
and
backlog.
We are working. So now, when we could get in the courthouse in 3 weeks, it took us 3 months to get in here. So she's paying the mortgage. She has to pay the mortgage. And now we get in the court.
She can't rehab the house.
She can't do nothing. She can't do anything with the house.
But can't she sue the guy that's in there?
Well, of course, but he's squatting. So what
does he have?
Right. So he's squatting. So long story short, it took about 5, because even just getting the writ of possession took another few weeks. So it's 4 months of just paying the mortgage, trying to get him out, and he finally.
Before the closing, do I need to go out to the property?
You would definitely want before the closing, during your due diligence period, you would want to square all of that stuff away. Hey, I see, people on the premises. Hey, I see, even, little stuff like this HVAC unit is old. You want to get all of that squared away in your due diligence period, where,
when you're doing that contract that says, do you want an inspection? I would probably say yes.
Yes. And yes, you definitely want an inspection, and you would want in the real estate investing space, you would want at least 30 days. It gets hard because these people want to close quickly, but you would want at least 2 weeks to 30 days of due diligence. So you get, it was crazy. And I feel bad, but
did you get him out?
We're out. We got the. I think the sheriff just went out not too long ago. So finally. It
didn't get ugly, did it?
Nah, no. Well, once the sheriffs come out, most people they're already gone by the time they get there. So
because the sheriff will put their stuff on the street, right? Isn't that
Exactly.
So
property.
So to go back to the news item, there were protests, and now there's going to be, or we think there's going to be more protests that have to do with this, but they're just kind of tangentially related. Is that right?
Well, I think there's another release of a video of some police violence that they were
that happened in a
worried
different city
was going to get this group upset and cause them to riot, which I think is why they've called out the National Guard, or at least that's what I heard on the radio.
Yeah.
My news source.
I had one other question about that. It was just an observation. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on it. When I was watching the news about the protests that were going on in Atlanta, I guess it was Saturday or so ago, there was this police cruiser on fire right in front of the CNN Center. Yep. And at first I thought, okay, well, that's bad. You shouldn't have police cruisers on fire. But then I thought to myself, how in the world would you get a police cruiser on fire? And how in the world, if you own a police cruiser, would you leave it unattended long enough for somebody to put some incendiary device on it?
Right. Throw some fireworks in there.
Oh, that's where the fireworks part. And the blowtorch. If you got a blowtorch and an incendiary device, I can see how that could happen.
So but maybe I was wrong. Maybe
you'd have to leave your cruiser unattended, for quite some time for somebody to pull that off, right?
Yeah, but they do. They leave them unattended. They leave them running, and they're sitting there.
Okay. Especially when there's when there is a protest, authorized, that they're coming a lot.
They'll just park police cruisers in certain areas,
and they'll patrol, just to make sure, and it's left unattended. And when the protesters get, violent, or when they want to throw fireworks, that's how stuff,
That's how stuff can happen.
Unfortunate, definitely.
Well, that's the news.
Time for questions from a 10-year-old.
This is our new segment, Questions from a 10-Year-Old. We have no idea what she's going to ask. It's completely spontaneous. Miss 10-year-old, please tell us your question.
What is an Irreverent D?
An Irreverent D. Oh, I want to take that
Irreverent
question. Irreverent D.
It's different than Reverend D.
That's right.
Irreverent.
You know the word reverent. Okay. Well, reverent means that we give respect and honor, and we treat somebody with a certain amount of awe. Like, we're supposed to be reverent to judges, and we're supposed to be reverent to grandmothers and priests. And so we kind of jokingly call Dwayne Irreverent D because he's
Sometimes I get in trouble for not being respectful enough.
sometimes he gets in trouble for not being respectful enough.
Every once in a while
That's right.
with certain judges.
The problem can come when not every person who is supposed to be revered acts in a respectable way.
What's revered?
Sorry.
Respected.
Respected. That's right. Not all people in all times act in a respectable way. And so if you're in a position where you have to interact with a person you're supposed to respect, but they're not being respectable, the question is, well, what do you do? And sometimes lawyers and people in general find themselves in that place. And what we know Irreverent D does is he just speaks power, speaks truth to power.
Sometimes, not all judges, there's some very good judges, but sometimes the black robe sucks their brain right out of them.
Oh my God. We're going to make sure, we're going to promote this video and make sure it gets like ultimate traction so you get in trouble more.
Right.
Saying something like that would be irreverent.
That would be irreverent.
Yes.
That's right.
I would never say that in court.
We would not say that.
I would not get out of jail.
No, that was complete hypothetical,
That's
correct?
right.
Yeah, all right. All right. Do you have a follow-up question, 10-year-old?
Yes. Why do we add the D to the end?
D. Oh, that's because his name is Dwayne.
My nickname's D.
D. Irreverent D. All right.
Thank
well,
you for your question.
That has been
Thank you.
questions from a 10-year-old. That was a great
That
question.
was a great
Definitely.
question.
That's a. You know, it's funny. We were talking. I can't remember if we talked about this in a previous episode, but you know, we spend so much of our educational careers learning how to say things fancy, and
Legalese.
then
when you go
it
to
turns
trial.
out when you go into actual
Gotta
practice,
lose all
the
of that.
lawyers who are the best, they're like you, D.
Speak
Like
truth to power.
They're really slow,
You
and
just-
so therefore they have to break it down for everybody
right.
because they don't understand.
you would just say
Right.
they stop saying things fancy and they say things simple. And
I exited the vehicle.
then I proceeded.
Then I proceeded.
Yeah. I had to strike out that, and we were writing a demand the other day, and the person who was writing for me said, and then they proceeded to go through the intersection. I said, if you have the choice between saying things simple and saying
Right.
things fancy, always say it simple. You did not proceed through the intersection, you went.
Yeah.
Right?
So
we talk plain
So,
English.
officer, you got out of the car
Yes, I proceeded to exit the vehicle.
and you walked back to where
Kiss.
Jim was that you keep calling the defendant.
That's exactly
All
right.
right.
Yeah,
He's Jim.
Exactly.
He has
All
a
right.
name.
Well, here's to
Simple.
another episode in the books.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next time when Bob and Irreverent D talk law.